Dathel, where King Math lives and Gwydion lives and such. And King Math tells Taryn, page 108, "Face me, assistant pig keeper. Fear not to see what I myself know." Because on the previous page, we're told that Taryn looks at King Math's face and notices this guy's pretty old and careworn. He's not long for this earth. And Math says, "The hand of death reaches toward mine, and I'm not loath to clasp it." Okay? It says, "I'm looking forward to death coming. With a glad heart would I answer it. For a crown is a pitiless master, harsher than the staff of a pig keeper." He's telling Taryn, harder to be king than pig keeper. While a staff bears up, a crown wears down. Beyond the strength of any man to wear it lightly. Which is a very Shakespearean idea. Shakespeare writes a series of English history plays about Henry IV, his son, Prince Hal, who becomes Henry V. And in one of those plays, it begins with Richard II. But in one of those plays, and I think it is Richard II, he refers to the crown of the king as the hollow crown. Okay? And what is being suggested there is, we kind of think the crown is symbolic. Wealth, power, all this stuff that comes along with it. But by calling it the hollow crown, because obviously a crown is hollow, it's just a circle, okay? But by calling it a hollow crown, Shakespeare and his characters are also suggesting there's really nothing there, okay? The crown itself is an extraordinary weight, okay? It doesn't give everything that one assumes comes along with it. What grieves me is not my death, but at the end of my life to see blood spilled in the land where I sought only peace. Now we've heard talk before about Iran and who ruled Prydain before Iran, Akron. Okay? We don't know who ruled before Akron, but Math gives us a little bit more background here about the sons of Dawn. He says, "You know the history of our royal house, how long ago the sons of Dawn voyaged in their golden ships to Prydain." He doesn't tell us where they voyaged from. We find that out at the end of the novel. "And how men sought their protection against Iran Deathlord, who had robbed Prydain of its treasures and turned a rich fair land into a fallow field. Since then, the sons of Dawn have stood as a shield against the ravages of Anuvan. But if the shield now be riven, then all shatters with it." Okay? And again, you get language like long ago. That doesn't imply 20, 30, 40. It doesn't even really imply 80, 90 years. It implies ages ago. Okay? Gwydion, "We'll gain victory. Don't worry. The Lord of Anuvan stakes all upon this venture." He goes on, "Good tidings as well as bad have reached us." Okay? So the bad, Smoit and his armies are embattled in the valley of Istrad, etc. More heartening is word that the armies of the west domains are but a few days' march from our stronghold. Scouts have already sighted them. It is a host greater than any ever raised in Prydain. Lord Pryderi himself commands them. He's talking about, see, Dathel is right here. These are the areas, the domains of Pryderi. These are the free Kamats, the people that Taryn raised, came from here. So Gwydion is saying, essentially, we're betting everything on Pryderi and his host. They will come, they will supplement our forces, etc. He has done all I prayed from him and more. My only unease is that Iran's liegemen may give battle and turn him aside before he reaches here. Not least among our good tidings. Right? Not least doesn't mean the best, but it means pretty good, is the coming of Taryn of Caradalbin and the warriors led from the Comets. I have counted heavily upon him and shall ask still more. So, Math says to Taran, go now to your task. That is, whatever Gwydion commands you to do. For the day has come when an assistant pig keeper must help bear the burden of a king. Okay? Again, emphasizing that distinction between pig keeper, king, because what did Taran want in the beginning of the first novel?
To be noble born or hero.
To be noble born, possibly to become a king. Okay? To have worth, to have honor,
Glory.
to earn glory in battle, to be a battle lord. Now he's getting his chance. But now he's also, Math says, going to assist the king. Not just any low-level king like Smoit, but the high king. Okay? Page 110. A man calls out to them at the bottom of the page, calls out to Taran Fluter, calls out to them, tall, deeply weathered face, white hair to his shoulders, and Fluter runs to him and falls down on his knee before him. And we find out this is Taliesin. Taliesin is a real person. In
Folklore.
it's thought. No, in history. Okay? Was a real Celtic bard in 4th, 5th century. Okay? Lived, in other words. It's thought. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's completely made up like Arthur, unless you think Arthur's real, etc. So, Fluter says, Chief Bard of Prydain, made me a gift of my harp. Okay, what's the thing about Fluter's harp, though?
It snaps whenever he lies. Or the strings snap whenever he lies.
Strings snap when he lies. Is it only when he lies?
Or when he flavors the truth.
When he embellishes
It kind of holds him accountable.
the truth. It holds him accountable. That's exactly right. So, Taliesin says, yes, Fluter, I've thought about that gift. It's been on my conscience. And we're told Taliesin's features, though heavily lined, seem filled with a strange mixing of ancient wisdom and youthfulness. Like Adaon, his son, and Taran's companion of long ago, his eyes were gray, deep-set, etc., etc. And he says, I knew the nature of the harp when I gave it to you. I knew, he's telling us, exactly what this harp does. And knowing your own nature, suspecting that you would always have some small trouble with the strings. In other words, Fluter received a gift that was designed for him. Fluter, trouble? Why, not a bit of it. Never for a moment. Bang, bang. Fact of the matter is, as I stop and think on it, the old pots forced me to tell the truth. Shall we say, a little more than I normally would. But it does occur to me, telling the truth has harmed no one, least of all myself. Okay? Fluter is a bard. He wants to be a bard. He doesn't want to be king. Okay? What do bards do? What do poets, songwriters, singers, fiction writers do? They entertain.
Tell stories of history.
They tell stories. Are all the stories of history?
Well, not of history.
Did this really happen? No, it didn't. It didn't happen. Therefore, one way of looking at it is, what is this?
Fantasy.
They lie, but his strings would break if you tried to tell it.
It's a lie. C.S. Lewis once described in a letter to J.R.R. Tolkien stories like this as lies breathed through silver. Think about that image for a minute. It's a lie, but what kind of lie is it?
A good one.
Oh man, it's a beautiful lie. I mean, it's a glorious lie. But it's not true. It didn't really happen. All the stuff in Shakespeare, none of it's true. Okay? But you almost wish it were. Okay? So, that's what Fluter wants to be. He wants to be a professional, walking, writing, silver lie teller. Okay? But it does occur to me telling the truth has harmed no one, least of all myself. Taliesin, then you have learned no small lesson. Taliesin is telling us there, Fluter, I gave you that
Harp.
brain, thank you. Brain's just gone for me this morning. That harp, for this reason, to make you see yourself. The harp is like a mirror. The more he lies, the more the strings break. The less he lies, the less the strings break. Nonetheless, my gift was in jest, yet not entirely in jest. Say perhaps the laughter of one heart to another. In other words, Taliesin is kind of saying, yeah, I knew exactly what that harp did. And I think the implication is, I had it before you. And when I saw you, I saw me. That's why he can say, the laughter of one heart to another. Why did Taliesin give, if my reading is right, give the harp to Fluter?
Teach him a lesson.
Okay, that, but why else? If he had it before him, he got the lesson. He doesn't need the harp anymore to tell him, Taliesin, don't shade the truth. Don't embellish the truth. Don't add to the truth. Or just don't out and out lie. Okay? Taliesin then says, but you have borne it willingly. That is, you've borne this thing that has shown you yourself. Take any harp you want. Come on, choose one. What can the harp also be symbolic of? Nah, I'm not going to go there. Never mind. Just scratch that thought. They'd take me off somewhere that we don't have time. So, he points to a shelf where there's a bunch of harps. Some new, some old. Some more gracefully curved than the one Fluter has. Fluter runs over to them. He starts looking at them. He starts feeling them, running his fingers along the strings. And then he comes back. And he holds his harp. Ah, yes. Well, you honor me. But this old pot is quite good enough for me. There are times, I swear, when it seems to play of itself. None has a better tone. When the strings are fixed, that is. It sits well against my shoulder. Not to belittle these, but what I mean is that somehow we're used to each other. No, I won't change it. He means it's like the harp has adapted to him as much as he has adapted to the harp. When he says it sits well against my shoulder, I mean, that's a pretty important thing for a harp. If you're holding it like this, okay, and it's sitting between, you're holding one band here because it's shaped triangular, and the other part here, he's saying, you know, I've now got it to where I can hold it perfectly. Taliesin. All right. You others, you've seen all these treasures. Stored in this hall of lore as much as pertains ancient learning. Though Iran Deathlord robbed men of their craft secrets, he could not gain the songs and sayings of our bards. Here they have been carefully gathered. Of your songs, my gallant friend, talking to Fluter, there are not a few. Okay, that's an example of Old English. It's called litotes, or understatement. When he says there are not a few, lots of your songs are here, Fluter. So, what are we told?
That Fluter's accomplished.
He's an accomplished singer. He's an accomplished bard. Memory lives longer than what it remembers, Taliesin says, and all men share the memories and wisdom of all others. Below this chamber, he says, there's even more treasure. Like poetry itself, the greater part is the more deeply hidden. In other words, what you see on the surface level of a poem, that's one thing. But the more you dig, the deeper you dig, the richer and richer and richer it becomes. Gurgi, O wisdom of noble bards, it makes humble Gurgi's poor tender head spin with whirlings and twirlings. Alas, for he has no wisdom. Taliesin, you don't think so? You don't think you have any wisdom, Gurgi? That is not true. Of wisdom there are as many patterns as a loom can weave. Yours is the wisdom of a good and kindly heart. Where have we ever seen Gurgi do something evil, malicious, mean, hard-hearted, selfish, even? You don't. Gurgi is like in a Christian,
faithful dog.
okay, faithful dog. But dogs can't talk. Dogs aren't rational. Gurgi's somewhat rational. He's kind of like, for lack of a better phrase, in the Christian tradition, pre-fallen man. He's just good. Yeah, he wants to eat a lot, but okay. It's not necessarily bad when you are an animal-like creature and have animal-like appetites. Right? Such as that of Call. He says, yours is the wisdom of a good and kindly heart. Scarce it is, that is, the wisdom of a good and kindly heart. That is scarce. You don't find many people like you, Gurgi. And it's worth all the greater. Such as that of Call. He's saying Call is like Gurgi. He has a what? A good and kindly heart. And added thereto, add to Call's good heart, the wisdom of the earth. That is, of knowing the times for planting, sowing, reaping, etc. The gift of waking barren ground and causing the soil to flourish in a rich harvest. He's saying, Call can take a piece of dead earth. Dead earth doesn't just mean there's nothing growing on it right now. It means you put seeds in that soil and you water it and they're not going to grow. Call can take that dead earth and rejuvenate it. He can make it so that it will produce life again. Call. It's not me. It's the garden that does it. And, and when I get back to it, there's got to be hell to pay. It's got to be hard. Ilanwi. I was to gain wisdom on the Isle of Mona. That's why Dalvin sent me. All I learned was needlework, cooking, curtsying. Taliesin. Learning is not the same as wisdom. She thinks wisdom is knowledge, like facts. Okay? In your veins, princess, flows the blood of the enchantresses of Lear. Your wisdom may be the most secret of all, for you know without knowing, even as the heart itself knows how to beat. Yeah, but how does the heart know how to beat? It's its job. I mean, we say it's DNA. Yeah, but how does the DNA know? I mean, you get the point he's getting at? How does an apple seed know I'm not an oak? Because it is in the very heart of it. That is, its purpose is designed within it. He's saying the same thing, essentially, about Ilanwi. Your wisdom is hidden deep inside you. He's kind of saying, it'll come out. Terran, alas for my own wisdom. I was with your son when he met his death. He gave me a brooch of great power. And while I wore it, there was much I understood, and much that was hidden grew clear to me. Again, this is kind of knowledge. That's not what Taliesin is talking about. The brooch is no longer mine, if indeed it ever truly was. What I knew then, I remember only as a dream lingering beyond my power to grasp it. What's Terran saying? Ah, shucks. I don't have any wisdom. Taliesin. Notice, a shade of sorrow passed over Taliesin's face. It's almost like he hears Terran, and he fears to tell Terran what he needs to tell him. There are those who must first learn loss, despair, and grief. What loss has Taryn already learned? Well, Adaon, Rune. What despair and grief? I mean, you could say those also come from Adaon and Rune's death. But what else? What other despair and grief has Taryn known? How about the despair of not knowing who he is? And the grief that comes from that. Of all paths to wisdom, this is the cruelest and longest. That is, learning, experiencing loss, despair, grief. Are you one who must follow such a way? Don't know. Notice, he told Gergi what his wisdom was. He told Call what his wisdom was. He kind of tells Ilandri what his wisdom is. Taryn's kind of sitting there. Yes, and me. What's my wisdom? Don't know, kid. You might have to go through hell and back. If you are, that is, if you have to learn loss, despair, and grief to learn wisdom, take heart nonetheless. Those who reach the end do more than gain wisdom. Pain, loss, despair, grief. If you have to go through that and you come out the other side, Taliesin is saying, those who reach the end do more than gain wisdom. As rough wool becomes cloth, Taryn learned that lesson, right? In crude clay a vessel, learn that lesson. So do they, loss, despair, grief, what? Change and fashion wisdom for others. And what they give back is greater than what they won. In other words, he is saying, loss, despair, and grief are like what? Clay to the potter, wool to the weaver, iron to the smith. What does Taryn learn from working with in-law? They are like life to the what? To the person alive, to the liver. Okay? Despair, loss, grief are the things you take and make your life into something out of. Okay? It's all how you deal with them, how you overcome them. Taryn's about to say something. We don't know what he's about to say, but a horn blows. And they go out. We see banner bearers. Taryn's banner is held up. And we find out Lord Perderi has arrived. He enters the great hall. He cries out to them, page 116, "Well met, lords. I rejoice to see you gathered here. The threat of a Nuvan makes you forget your own quarreling." He's speaking to them as they're somehow different. Okay? Once more you seek protection from the House of Dawn, like fledglings who seek the hawk circling. Is Perderi a higher lord than Gwydion?
No.
No, he's not. Is Perderi from the House of Dawn?
Yes.
Okay. His voice rang with unhidden scorn. Taryn starts at the king's harsh speech. The High King himself looked sharply at Perderi, like, "You whippersnapper, this is my hall. You don't talk to me that way." "How then, Lord Perderi? I summoned all who will stand with us, for the safety of all things hangs in the balance. Would any have lingered, seeing himself threatened? That is, would any of these cowards," that's what he's really saying, "have stayed at home once they realized the real threat? No. Why are they here? They're ready to hide behind your walls. Men answer only to an iron fist or a sword at their throats. Page 117. Those who bear you allegiance bear it as it serves their own ends. He's saying, this kid here, Terran, the wanderer, he doesn't really serve you. He's not really going to show you true allegiance. He's just afraid. Gwydion, when Pryderi says, among themselves these cantrip rulers are never at peace, but each is eager to profit from the weakness of his labor. In their secret hearts, are they less evil than Iran? Gwydion, how do you know what's in their hearts? It is beyond any man's wisdom to judge the secret heart of another, for in it are good and evil mixed. But these are matters to ponder over the embers of a campfire, as you and I have often done. In other words, this isn't stuff to be talked about out in public. Our deeds now must safeguard. Come, Pryderi, son of Pul, your place awaits you. He says, you summoned me, Prince of Dawn. I am here. To join you? No. Surrender. And he's like, what? No, I'm not jesting. Only thus can I serve Prydain. Surrender to me. Gwydion, have Iran's false promises blinded you to reason? Would you tell me that a liege man of the Death Lord serves any realm but Anuvan? To me, Iran can promise nothing I do not already have. But Iran will do what the Sons of Dawn failed to do. Make an end of endless wars. In other words, what does Pryderi say Iran will do?
Just
Finally.
end all war.
Which means?
Enslave everybody.
Okay, it's one way of putting it.
Peace.
He will bring peace. What does every tyrant throughout history promise?
Peace.
I will bring peace. I will bring security. I will bring safety. What goes along with each of those promises?
Enslavement.
Yeah, I have to take certain things from you. Okay? What did, you've seen it go around on Facebook and stuff. I think it was Ben Franklin said. Those who would, how's it go? Those who would sell security for peace
deserve neither.
will have neither. I think it's will have neither. It might be deserve neither.
I think it is deserved.
Gwydion, peace, the peace of death and the silence of mute slavery. Within the country of North Korea, are the people at peace?
No.
Within the country of North Korea, yeah, they are.
Oh, yeah.
They're not at war with anybody. Do they have a good life?
No.
No, because they have nothing. Within the country of Cuba, are the people at peace? Yes. And notwithstanding what people say, do they have a good life? Don't buy all the BS about the Cuban healthcare system. It's
Garbage.
yes, thank you. That's a polite way of putting it. I was going to say something that started with sh and with it. Okay, it's not good. All right, but they're at peace. So, Pryderi says, lay down your arms, abandon the weaklings who cling to you for protection. Surrender to me now. Kirdathel shall be spared, and yourself those I deem worthy to rule with me. Meth, is there worse evil than that which goes in the mask of good? You put on the face of goodness, and yet you are evil. Okay? One of the captive lords, actually he's going to strike Pryderi. Meth says, touch him not. We welcomed him as a friend. He leaves as a foe, but he shall leave in safety. Why? It's that old idea of hospitality. He came as a friend. He's safe while he's here, even though he's now our enemy. He gets to leave in peace and safety. Okay? Anybody who touches him, that person will die. So Pryderi leaves. Page 121. Gwydion says, Pryderi's going to strike in all his might. It's going to cost him dearly. But he can be spendthrift of his warriors' lives. Meaning they are what to Pryderi?
Worthless.
Cannon fodder. Okay? Gwydion says he can be spendthrift. Will Gwydion ever be spendthrift with his warriors' lives?
No.
Will Taran? Will Math? No, they won't. Okay. So, top of the next page. Taran felt uneasy. He's thinking about the battle to come. As a boy, he had dreamed of taking a man's place among men. He is now a man among men. He is a war leader for Gwydion. And as a boy, he deemed himself well fit to do so. Now, amid the grizzled, the battle-wise warriors, that is, these men who are 2 and possibly 3 times his age, his strength seemed feeble, his knowledge clouded. He's sitting there next to Call, next to Gwydion, and we're not told necessarily others, but others, and he's thinking, who am I next to these guys? Call did what? We discovered earlier.
Rescued Hen Wen from Anuvan.
Marched into the halls of death to rescue a kidnapped pig, a pignapped pig, okay? Call, sensing Taran's thoughts, winked encouragement at him. The stout old farmer, Taran knew, had paid close heed to Gwydion's words. And yet Taran also knows that Call's heart is where?
Wanted to be at his turning time.
This isn't what Call lives for. The turnip patch is what Call lives for. He's doing this, getting ready to fight a bloody battle. Why? So that he can go home and grow turnips. Okay? So, battle starts. I'm going to skip a bunch. Bottom of 127 and 128. The deathless warriors of Anuvan halted as if at the faint stirring of some clouded memory. The moment passed. Why? Because Math the High King comes out. And they strode on. The field of battle was silent now. An odd hush had fallen even upon the men of Pryderi. The High King did not turn away as the cauldron born drew closer. He's come out of the kingdom. He's come out of the castle. He drew closer, his eyes fixed theirs as he raised his sword defiantly, and flinching, he stood in pride, ancient mastery, grasping the flashing sword in his frail hands. He swung it downward. It gets turned aside, and they pounce. And they chop him into little tiny pieces. And Caerdathel falls. We see flames rising above the great hall, and above the castle walls, the black banner of Iran. Okay? Next page. The army of Pryderi, denying even the right of burial for the slain, had driven the defenders into the hills east of Caerdathel. Notice, the what of burial?
The right.
Right, not R-I-T-E, R-I-G-H-T. Alexander is talking about this idea that, I was talking about this with my European Lit students just a few minutes ago, that even among your enemies, you give your enemies the opportunity to bury their dead. And if they can't, because they're dead, you bury them. There's something secret about this act of burying the dead, okay? Not necessarily just in a Christian tradition. In the ancient Greek system, Trojan War. If Greeks kill Trojans and the Trojans are out in the Greek battlefield area, the Greeks bury the Trojans and vice versa. Okay? Pryderi doesn't follow that law, that unwritten tradition. Okay? So the companions go off and they find each other again. Faithful Gurgi's burying the banner of the white pig. Leon, with Fluter beside her, crouched in the scant shelter of a rocky outcropping. Hevid the smith built a campfire. Taran, Ilan, we call, tried to warm themselves. Lasser, though sorely wounded, had lived through the battle, but the enemy had taken cruel toll of the Comet men. Lanio, dead. Next page, towards the bottom. Taliesin says, Math the king is dead, but we have a new high king, Gwydion. The warriors draw their swords, cried out the name of the new king. And Gwydion says, Pryderi's victory gives us one choice, one hope. Though messengers bear tidings of our defeat to King Smoit and his army to the lords of the north, we dare not await their help. What we do must be done now. Okay? He says, here's our one chance. Never in man's memory has Ron sent his deathless warriors abroad in such strength. He's taken the greatest risk for the greatest gain. And he won. He defeated us. He said, here's our little chance. He left Anuvan empty. He has emptied Anuvan. If we could sneak back there, okay. He says 131 middle. They must not, that is the Cauldron-born, they must not reach Anuvan. As their power dwindles, the longer they remain beyond the Death Lord's realm, so at all costs must they be hindered, delayed, turned from every path they follow. Notice, can they kill the Cauldron-born?
No.
No, because they're already dead. Okay. Call, can we hinder them? Gwydion, not if we go as one army. We're going to have to divide our forces. Okay. He says the first, smaller force, shall be given as many horses as can be spared and hasten to pursue the Cauldron-born. The second will go to the valley of Kinvale, follow its river north. Okay. The third, he says, the sea must aid our venture. They'll then go and take the way of the sea. Okay. Terran says, I'll do whatever you ask. For the other journey, will you accept it? Terran, I'll serve as you command. Gwydion, I don't command this. No. I don't order any man to such a task against his will. All who follow you must do so willingly. Terran, and it's my will to do so. Okay, you get to delay the Cauldron-born. In other words, what's he asking of Terran and those who volunteer?
Fight against people who can't die.
Die. That's what he's asking them. You're going to die in this, you know. Okay? Terran, if I fail, how shall I send word? Gwydion, there is no turning back. If we fail, that's it. Okay. So, all the other Comet folk choose to follow Terran. Why? Because they chose to follow him before. Why did they choose to follow him before?
Because he's their friend.
Because he's their friend. Because they knew him. They'd seen him day in, day out, etc. Next couple pages, we have Terran learning from Call that Call thinks, Cauldron-born are going to march straight to Anuvan. And he says, we've got to come up with a different, a means of stopping them. Bottom of 134. Terran's heart sank at the sight of the column moving like a long serpent over the flatlands. And he turns to Call and says, can we hold them off at all? I mean, they're on high ground and they're looking at the Cauldron-born, just like a snake slithering through the grass. Call, pebble can turn aside an avalanche, or a twig stem a flood. In other words, what do we need to do? Get them in a bottleneck. We've got to slow them down. Okay? So, they reach a wide, broad area of wasteland, bottom of 135. No trees, no shrubs, no grass, just red dirt. Terran, what is this place? Call, top of 136, the Red Fallows. I've heard it spoken of, though I believed it to be no more than a traveler's tale. No traveler's tale. Men have long shunned it, yet once it was the fairest realm in Prydain. So notice this. This was once the garden of Prydain. Now, dead earth. Why? There is more honor in a field well plowed than in a field steeped in blood. This is a field that has been steeped in blood. So much blood that nothing grows here. Okay? Call goes on and says, a prize it was to be won and held. Many lords fought for its possession. But in the fighting over it, year after year, the hooves of steeds trampled the ground, the blood of warriors stained it. In time, the land died. And soon its blight crept far beyond the battlegrounds. In my younger days, I, too, marched with the battle hosts, and left not a little of my own blood in the fallows. How old is Call?
Very.
Okay. Terran, would the soil not yield again if it were labored well? Can we not bring this dead land back to life? Call, who knows? Okay. So he does say, talking about the hills nearby, page 137, he said, you know, we can beat them to Anuvan, the Cauldron Born. We got to force them into the hills. The hills of Bran Galad also give a path to Anuvan and a shorter one. They rise sharper as they go westwards, turn soon to steep crags. There stands Mount Dragon, the highest peak, guarding the iron portals of the land of death. Okay? Says harsh passage. More for us than them, because we can die, they can't. Terran, indeed, there is no happy choice, old friend. The path of the Red Fallows is easier but longer, the mountain way harder and shorter. I don't know what to do. What do we do, Call? Choice is yours. You're the war leader. You're the one who gets the big bucks. I might say if you trust your strength, the mountains may befriend as much as foe. That is, maybe we could use the mountains to our advantage. Terran, we must drive the Cauldron warriors into the hills. If that's your choice, says Call, then we need to do it right here, right now. Okay? So, they start to do that, page 140. Band of Cauldron Born, very bottom of the page, had broken from the main forest, now strove to clamber through an undefended breach. Call reached it first. Okay? Seizes the warrior, throws him over the cliff. Another one comes up. Call pulls his sword out. Terran comes to Call's side. Bottom of 141, top of 142 and following. They repel the Cauldron Born, but not without losses. Call was bleeding heavily from the head, fleece-lined coat, blood-soaked, slashed and tattered by the blades. So he's not only wounded in the head. And Call gasps to Terran, after them, my boy, give them no rest. The twigs have turned the flood, but it must be turned again, and many times. Terran, one stout oak tree has turned it. Once again I've leaned on it. Call, I'm just a farmer, but warrior enough to know my death wound. Go along, my boy, carry with you no more burdens than you must. In other words, let me die. Don't worry about me. You've got to stop them. Terran, what then? Will you have me break the promise I made? That we will dig and weed together? Call. I hoped one day to sleep in my own garden. That is, to be buried in that garden. Drone of bees would have pleased me more than the horn of Gwyn the hunter, but I see the choice was not to be mine. And Call dies. And Terran realizes Call is dead. While the grieving companions gather stones, Terran hollows out a grave with his hands. I don't think that means with a shovel or spade. I think it means he's digging with his hands. All right? So, chapter 13. A little more fast. The closer the Cauldron Born get back to Anuvan, the stronger they become, page 146. Terran's unsure how to stop them. They have skirmishes that go on back and forth. Let's see here. Eilonwy and Gurgi get separated from Terran and the others. In 148, Terran wants to go after him. Fluter says, you can't. Why not? He's got to think of everybody, not just Arlanwi and Gergi. Fluter says it's a heavy choice. So he lets Arlanwi and Gergi look to themselves. Terran and his troops, men, go after the Cauldron-born. And Doli shows up, page 150. And Doli tells them that Adeleg has sent the fair folk abroad to aid in the obstruction of the forces of Anuvan. And bottom of 151, Doli says, Adeleg remembers you and how you have helped us, and he wants to repay the debt. The fair folk are on the march. Too late for Kirdathel, but maybe we can still be some help. Okay. Glue mentions his cavern. On page 153, Doli's like, caverns, that's it. Because he knows where they are. Caverns. No more than a day's march from here. I'm sure of it. Fair folk mine. Gems, precious stones, etc., etc. But, he says, we can go through the caverns, through the mine, and that'll enable you to catch up with the Cauldron-born. Because, keep in mind, they still have to try to stop them from getting back to Anuvan. So he tells them, don't worry, we'll get there. Let's skip a bunch. And they make their way to the caverns. Glue starts picking up gemstones and treasure and all this other stuff. 158. Doli warns Glue because he's tugging on a ledge. And what does Glue cause to happen?
Cave-in.
Cave-in. So now they're stuck. Now all they can do is go back the way they came. So they've actually lost time. All right? We get chapter 14. Now, it's nighttime, right? It's nighttime. And we go back to chapter 14 to Arlanwi when she and Gergi get separated. And she gets captured by Dorath. He wants to take her little bauble from her. He doesn't realize she's her till the bottom of 163. And he says, this beardless boy, what? Not a boy at all, a wench. And she says, I'm not a wench. I'm Arlanwi, blah, 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 blah. And she warns Dorath, page 164. Let me back up a little bit. He warns her first, 164. He says, I remember, my memory is that the Lord Swineherd spoke once of you. Welcome, Princess Vixen. You are a choicer prize than any ransom. A long score lies between Dorath and your pig keeper. You give me and my company the pleasure of settling a little of it. What's he suggesting?
Bad things.
Yeah. Me and my men are going to have some fun with you. And she goes, have you considered what will be left of you when Terran finds you? That is, when the assistant pig keeper gets hold of you. Until now, the Princess of Lear had kept her self-possession, but she could sense the outlaw's thoughts behind his cold eyes, and for the first time she was deeply afraid. She now realizes, uh-oh. Lord Swineherd and I will finish our reckoning when the time comes, Dorath replied. Grinning, he bent toward her. But your time is now. And Gergi jumps him, tries to. Dorath turns on Gergi. Arlanwi cries out. And a shape springs from the rocks. What's the shape? The wolves. Remember? Medwin sent out the wolves, bears, lions, tigers, bears, etc. Okay? And she looks at the wolf, and she's thinking, I'm not sure whether you understand or not. The only wolves I ever, top of 166, I met personally, they live far from here in Medwin's Valley. And the wolf shakes its tail. She goes, well, you understood that. Medwin, 2 wolves? Must be. So she talks to the wolves, essentially. And they help lead her. Next morning, and day goes by, and she sees from a distance, again from the hills, looking down in the valley, she sees Taran and his company go straight into the rocks and disappear. It's not like there's a big cave opening. It's not a fair folk entrance. Right? And she's like, what are they doing? And then she sees the huntsman. Page 170, she keeps watching. And there come Taran and everybody else back out of the cave. And she just doesn't understand. From her vantage point, very bottom of the page, the girl could span the valley. That is, she could see the whole thing. And it was suddenly coldly clear to her that the Comet warriors and the huntsmen, as yet unseen by one another, were moving closer. That is, it's almost like there's a line of trees between them. And the Comet folk are coming this way, the huntsmen are going this way, and neither side knows the others are there. Alon, they'll be trapped. And she cries out, Taran, Taran. Doesn't do any good. She's too far away. Darkness had now fallen over the valley, blinding the girl to the inevitable clash of the warrior bands. A nightmare in which all action was useless, in which she could only wait for the slaughter bound to come. Still calling Taran's name, she snatches the bauble from her cloak, lifts the sphere high. Brighter and brighter it glowed. The wolves turned away fearfully. Gurgi threw his arms over his face. The beam spread and rose toward the clouds, as though the sun itself were bursting from the mountainside. The whole valley had turned bright as noon. Turn to page 31. Night turned to noon. Quenched will be Dernwin's flame, vanished its power. Night turned to noon, and rivers burned with frozen fire, ere Dernwin be regained. Night's been turned to noon. The first part of the prophecy has now been fulfilled. Okay? River of ice. So we still have them, the free Kamat people, together. And they see the light caused by Arlanwi. Let's see here. And I think before then, Taran and the others are talking with Doli. Page 176. Bottom of the page. They reached the summit of the mountains and had come to the rim of an icebound lake. The sheer drop over the edge of the bluff, frozen waterfall, glittered under the moon. Down at the bottom of the gorge is where the huntsmen are all encamped. Which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because I can't remember whether the huntsmen are cauldron born or not, because if they're cauldron born, they have no need to camp. But anyways, they're sheltering. Taran glimpsed their campfires glowing below. And Dolly says, what do you think of that? Fluter, what? Sometimes I think Idling's right about you humans. Can't you see past your own nose? Can't you see it all? We're nearly atop those ruffians. Free the lake. He's saying, break the ice. Water does what? Wash them away. Taran, task is too great. The ice will defeat us. We don't have enough men. Melt it. Cut branches, bushes, everything that will burn. Where the ice is too thick, chop it away. Come on, you're dealing with fair folk. That is, I can help. I can use magic to help this process. Can it be done? Okay. So what do? They get as much dead, dry wood as they can. They put it at the base or at the top of the waterfall, and they light it, and the ice starts to melt. 178 at the bottom. In a moment, like a gate ripped from its hinges, like a wall collapsing, the side of the bluff gave way, and through the channel burst a sheet of water, carrying all before it. Well, what's the all before it?
The huntsman.
No, before that.
Oh,
It's all the burning wood and everything. Okay? Rivers burned with frozen fire. That's the second part of the prophecy. Arlanwi and Gurgi show back up. Page 180. She's talking. She says, I saw what you just did. It looked like a river of burning ice. Do you realize what you've done? Don't you see? Fluter, know what we've done? Yes, we rid ourselves of the huntsman. She said, no, it's the prophecy. Part of it's come true. Night turned to noon, rivers burned with frozen fire, ere Durnwin be regained. Taryn, but you've done part of that too. The night turned to noon. Fluter, Durnwin's flame, in this case I should remind you, the prophecy also said Durnwin's flame would be quenched and its power would vanish, which leaves us no better off than we were. It doesn't say anything about Durnwin will be regained and the power will come back. Okay? What's Fluter showing here? I've talked about this aspect of his character before.
his pessimism.
He's a pessimist, yeah.
He's also pessimistic though, whenever he said, so we need Iwanli and encouragement behind, and that kind of helped actually.
It enabled Ilan and Gurgi to do what they did. Karen, I don't understand the meaning of the prophecy. Are these signs of hope, or do we deceive ourselves? Only Dalban or Gwydion has wisdom to interpret them. Not quite true, because it's Ilanwi who pointed out to them, you've done two of the things now. Okay? Terrence says, our only chance, straight across the mountains, and hold back the Caldenborn as they get closer to Anuvan. Doli, not much hope there. Fairfolk can't come that far. Why? They can't get close to the kingdom of Anuvan. Forbidden land. He says, one of us might go with you. Yeah, it'll be me. So, he says, I've spent so much time above ground with you humans that being in Anuvan can't harm me, which isn't true. He's still Fairfolk. All right? The Enchanter. It's like the narrator saying, meanwhile, back at Caer Dallben, and we get what goes on there. Who shows up at Dallben's?
Perdiri, right?
Perdiri. What does he want to do? He wants to take the Book of Three. And he tries, and what happens to him?
He gets burned.
Yep. Which we're going to skip all of that. Okay, so we get the snowstorm. Doli is dying because they're getting too close to Anuvan. And it's freezing. Gwythaints show up. And Ka calls out, page 196, Akron. And Ka shows them where Akron is. They find her. And Akron is at the point of death. Okay, keep in mind, it's freezing cold. There's snow and ice everywhere. Page 200. They cling together for warmth. They don't have any. They don't have a fire. Terrence strips off his cloak, covers Ilanwi and Akron. Gurgi adds his sheepskin jacket. Terrence says, Akron will not live the night. She was too close to death when we found her. She will not have strength to stand such cold. Fluter, will any of us? Without a fire, we might just as well say farewell to each other right now. Terrence starts to get drowsy and feel like he's falling asleep. What's happening?
They're dying.
It's the cold. Read a great short story by Jack London called To Build a Fire. And it's about two guys who leave a place. This is up in the Klondike. They leave a place to go somewhere else, and one says, I'm going to take a shortcut. The other one's going to take the regular road. Okay? He takes the shortcut and gets stuck because he falls in a pool of water that's frozen, gets out, and now he's got to build a fire. Why? Because he's going to freeze to death pretty quickly. And the rest of the short story is about his attempt to build a fire. And I'll give away the end. He doesn't. And he dies slowly. And you know how he dies? From his feet up. He starts to realize his feet go numb. The going numb's the good part because they don't hurt anymore. And he just feels death kind of creeping up his body slowly and gets drowsy and such. Okay? Taryn, we got to have a fire. We need a fire. Dolly, with what? There's not a twig to be found. Page 201. Fluter, who had been silent this whole while, reaches behind him and unslung his harp. Dolly, music? We don't need music. Fluter, it shall give us the tune we need. Taryn, what are you going to do? Taryn asks Fluter, what are you going to do? He doesn't answer. He holds the harp lovingly with his arms, and then he breaks it over his knee. Burn it. It is wood well seasoned. That is, it will burn hot. What have you done? We need a greater fire than this wood can ever give us. Dolly, however, starts a fire. And Ilanwi wakes up. Tears streaming down her face because of the harp. Fluter, don't give it a second thought. The truth of the matter is that I'm delighted to be rid of it. I could never really play the thing. It was more a burden than anything else. Great Berlin, I feel light as a feather without it. Believe me, I was never meant to be a bard in the first place. But it gives a foul smoke. Makes my eyes water horribly. Why? The flames had now spread to all the fragments, and as the harp strings blazed, a melody sprang suddenly from the heart of the fire. Louder and more beautiful it grew. And the strains of music filled the air, echoing endlessly among the crags. Dying, the harp seemed to be pouring forth all the songs ever played upon it. All night the harp sings and burns. Now, it's not a big old concert harp. It's a little harp you can carry like this. It should be done burning in 20 or 30 minutes, and it burns all night long. And as the notes soared upward, a wind rose from the south, parting the falling snow like a curtain flooding the hills with warmth. Only at dawn did the flame sink into glowing embers, and the voice of the harp fall silent. Storm had ended, and in the ashes of the harp, Fluter pulls out a single string that did not melt. It had twisted and coiled around itself and glittered like pure gold. All right? So, Taryn talks to Akron, and she says, you're not going to be able to find Mount Dragon, page 205. She says, Mag and his warriors, they left me for dead. I lay in the forest like a wounded beast, etc., etc. She says, and yet I failed, even within sight of my goal. Dolly says, I can find the way, 206. Akron says, in doing so, dwarf, you would indeed be a fool. Of all the peaks surrounding Anuvan, Mount Dragon alone can be breached. Heed me. Crags are lures and traps. Others have been deceived. Their bones lie in the pitfalls. How does she know its entrance? She says, I'm the first one who found it. I showed Anuvan to it. Okay? Taryn, do you ask us to stake our lives on your words? In your heart you fear me, Pigkeeper, but which do you fear the more, the path I offer you or the certain death of Lord Gwydion? Do you want to overtake Aran's cauldron board? There's only one way you can do it. Go the path I tell you. 207. Taryn was silent a moment, searching for the wisdom to choose one way or the other, and again felt the weight of the burden Gwydion had set upon him to be more than he could bear. He says, I believe that we can do no less than trust her unless she gives us clear reason to doubt. So he follows Ochran's advice. They're almost, page 209, at the highest ridge of the dragon's shoulder when Kaw returns and cries out, Gwydion, Gwydion, Anubin, thanks. Why? Gwydion is about to arrive. If Taran doesn't get there to stop the cauldron board, Gwydion and his forces will be slaughtered. So Taran runs past her, Ochran, and he leaps from the ledge, bottom of the next page, leaps from the ridge to join the companions. The shelf of stone crumbles at his feet. He's been overlooking Anubin. He can see everything. Okay? And the shelf starts to fall. He falls forward. Eilonwy screams. He falls. And plunging from the peak of Mount Dragon, the Gwythaint that he'd seen speeding toward him. What's he thinking? He's falling. This giant man-eating bird. Yeah, he's thinking, I'm meat, man.
He's double dead.
But as it comes towards him, he recognizes this Gwythaint. It's the same one he rescued. And what does it do? It gets him in its talons and rescues him. We're not going to finish this. There's just no way. So, I'm actually going to stop. We're going to stop at chapter 19, the Death Lord. And we will pick up there on Thursday of next week, because there's no class on Tuesday. But go ahead and have read A Wrinkle in Time, because that's the book we pick up with next week, and we will get to it